so I'm seeing you from behind, talking from the front. Well, I'm glad to have a chance to speak with you. As you know, I am supportive of the effort that Mars One is making. You've got your work cut out for you, but there's no question that if we're going to do what we need to do on Mars, sooner or later we're going to have to go one way, because ultimately the purpose of going to Mars is to establish a new branch of human civilization. And it is also true that if you're doing this on your own nickel, you might as well do it sooner rather than later, because you can save a great deal of development cost if you go right to the settlement mission, which does not require return systems. That said, it's a supreme act of daring to make that commitment starting on the first mission. I understand that the plan is to mitigate that by pre-landing supplies, habitats, equipment, everything that could possibly be wanted, so as to, in advance, make the surface of Mars the second safest place in the solar system. And as it to be a one-way trip, life is a one-way trip. And the question is, well, what are you going to do on the way? So I'm all for it. I imagine that people are familiar with my ideas on how Mars exploration can be done. I also support those, provided that you have the money, as of course NASA does, if it was to decide to do this. I've written them up in my book, The Case for Mars. But I tell you what, rather than just rambling, why don't I open up to questions? What do you have to ask me?
So I suggest if there are any questions, I will repeat them so that possibly, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. So are there any questions? Yes.
What's the current state of affairs within NASA of implementing a Mars mission like LOMC has proposed?
What's the current status of affairs at NASA to implement the Mars mission as proposed?
NASA has no human Mars program at the moment. They almost killed their robotic program. They attempted to do so and got tremendous public pushback. It was really amazing for the NASA administrator to get up in front of Congress and say the reason why they were canceling our 2016 and 2018 joint Mars missions with Europeans was because our Mars program had already been successful, and so there was no point doing anymore. He kind of was taken to the woodshed for that remark, and so now NASA is doing its own geophysical probe in 2016 and a rover mission perhaps in 2020. But as to human exploration, they seem to be searching for a way to do anything but human Mars exploration. They have a heavy lift vehicle in development. They have a capsule. They have no mission for either. One mission you could do with those would be something like the Inspiration Mars mission and a 2-year Mars flyby. And if you develop a few additional pieces of hardware, you could do an actual Mars mission. But rather than propose that, or even a mission to the near-Earth asteroid, which President Obama had set that challenge in front of them in 2010, so as to say, okay, we're not going to go to the moon, we're going to get out of geocentric space, they came up with a rather bizarre plan to reach an asteroid by taking a boulder and trying to move it into lunar orbit so that astronauts could visit it without leaving geocentric space, which sort of defeated the purpose of the whole exercise. I mean, really what's needed here is for someone to show the way. What's missing in NASA right now is resolution, courage, determination, willingness to accept a challenge, the challenge that has been basically staring them in the face since 1973 when we left the moon for the last time. And, you know, so whether it's Mars One or Inspiration Mars or the Mars Society, as you know, we have a project of our own to send a one-year mission, a Mars simulation mission to the high Arctic starting next summer. Something's got to be done by someone that will set a standard for courage and get these people out of their rut.
Thank you, Robert. Next question.
I am Kazimierz from Poland. I am a Mars Society member. And how are you, Robert?
I'm fine.
Thank you. You are advisor for Mars One mission. I am very happy. And I have a question. Planet location for establish Mars One colony is the location is planet between 40 and 45 degree north latitude, and now we have new situation. Curiosity have discovered water in Mars soil in equator region. It is better to change location to equator, is more sun, higher temperature, and we save energy we need for heating habitats and our Mars suits. Thank you.
Did you hear, Robert, everything?
I've heard part of it. I think he was asking me about what I thought would be the best place to establish a colony.
That's right. Seeing the new insight.
Okay, I do agree that it should probably be in the Martian tropics. That is a latitude lower than, say, 30 degrees. And it's clear, though, that you do want to have a place with water. I think Curiosity did a sample and found 2% water, but the Mars Odyssey spacecraft has mapped Mars and has found regions within the Martian tropics that are as high as 7 or 8% water in the soil, and so those look pretty promising to me. The questioner, I think, also mentioned the idea of going to a low altitude location. That's a pretty good idea, in that you have more radiation shielding, a thicker atmosphere, which is easier to compress and make use of for in situ resource utilization. So basically, those would be 3 good criteria: low latitude, low altitude, and a high water composition in the soil.
Thank you.
Yes, the next question is coming up. Try to speak very loudly, probably. I don't need to repeat.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, say we have a colony on Mars. What do you think these people are going to do, and how is this colony going to develop over time?
Well, okay. What the people are, I got the question. He was quite clear. Obviously, the primary activity of the initial colonists will be to establish a beachhead, to get some greenhouses going, growing crops, to establish a process for extracting water, accumulating it. That might mean taking it out of the soil, but also if we could find in advance, using, say, ground-penetrating radar, a place where there is subterranean liquid water that we can drill to and bring up, and perhaps even get geothermal heat and power out of it, that would be a very strong motivator for choosing a site for the first base, or for an activity for a first base to try to open up. Okay, but to access geothermal power, set up greenhouses, to start making chemicals, starting with hydrocarbons, methane, methanol. Methanol can be turned into both gasoline-like substances and also into plastics. Metals, setting up an iron mill, that's something you certainly have good raw material on Mars. Eventually steel, glass, ceramics, things for making wires, tubes, habitation structures, prospecting for mineral ore. You know, it's strange, but you know, the first metal that we used on Earth was copper, and copper is actually geochemically quite rare on Earth. But there's natural processes that's concentrated into mineral ores that were so concentrated that ancient Egyptians and also American Indians even were able to use metallic copper. And so copper, of course, is extremely useful now that we have electricity. So prospecting for mineral ores, including near the top of the list copper, would be a very useful thing. Now, you raised another issue, which is how does this thing eventually become self-supporting? Now, it can become increasingly self-reliant, but it will still need to import high-tech goods from the Earth. So where does the money from that come? Well, initially, it's going to have to come from the support organization on Earth. And I think ultimately what we're going to have to do, and by we, I mean the community of people who want to colonize Mars, whether it's in the form of Mars One or the Mars Society, we're going to have to create a sufficient outreach to reach those at least 100 million people on this planet who think it's important for a positive human future that humans expand into space, to organize them into a support network to finance this thing. 100 million people times $100 a year would be 10 billion a year. That'd be enough to colonize Mars. A tenth of that would be enough to colonize Mars. And but they need to be gathered. And if you look at some of the most profound colonization efforts that have occurred, that is the ones that were the greatest leap of faith. For instance, the Pilgrims leaving Holland to come to America. The Mormons going to Utah to establish their own city on a hill in the middle of the desert. The Jews leaving Europe to go to Palestine in the late 19th, early to mid 20th century. A number of organization on Earth to help finance and keep financing this thing for a while. Now, I think though once it gets fully established as a actual branch of civilization, it will find ways to support itself. On Mars, you're going to have a group of technically adept people in a frontier environment where they're free to innovate and forced to innovate. They will make inventions they need to survive on Mars. Those inventions, perhaps ultra-productive, genetically modified crops, for example, or robotic technologies. Another example will be licensable on Earth as patents. They'll bring income in, and that income will be able to finance high-tech imports from Earth.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
Do you think that to go to Mars, the chemical propulsion will be enough, or we need to develop some sort of nuclear capability to get there?
I heard the question. I'm all for nuclear propulsion, but it's not needed to do Mars exploration, and certainly not settlement. The idea of quick trips is only important if you want to do this in your free time and come back and do something else. If you're going to Mars one way, it hardly matters whether it takes 4 months, 6 months, or 8 months. Okay, and certainly it doesn't matter for sending cargo one way. So right now with chemical propulsion, we can get to Mars in 6 months one way. That's the same duration as an average, a normal stay on the space station right now, or it's how long people were on ships when they went from England to Australia in the 1800s. It's something that people can certainly endure as part of the colonization effort. So I don't think we need nuclear propulsion. Now, what would be of extraordinary value, however, would be a nuclear reactor for surface power. And this is a significant technical issue here. While you can use solar energy on Mars, it's unreliable in that there could be dust storms that could greatly limit solar energy for months at a time. And so you'd have to have massive energy storage if you want to go all solar. It would be tremendously beneficial if we could have nuclear reactors on the surface of Mars. If we don't have that, I think we really need to see if we can find some geothermal energy sources, something that will be reliable regardless of whether the atmosphere is dusty or not.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Yes.
Hello, I'm Roel from Belgium. Last month, Mars Society did a request to the Mars One applications to apply for the 1-year mission on the North Pole for the Mars Society, which begins in June next year. I wonder how many people from the applicants of Mars One did apply for that mission, Mars Society.
Did you hear the question?
No, I did not hear that one. What was the thrust of it?
So we better, if you can come here, that is probably works best.
Hello, Robert. Last month, Mars Society did a request to the Mars One applicants to apply for the mission for the 1 year on the North Pole. From June next year, there will be a mission on the North Pole, sponsored by Mars Society. And I wondered if you can tell us how many people from the Mars One applicants did apply for your mission.
Okay, so I think the question was, are we getting a lot of volunteers? In particular, are we getting volunteers, are Mars One volunteers? And the answer is yes to both are. We've gotten scores of volunteers, and I haven't looked at them in detail yet because I'm waiting for the deadline of November 30th before I start going through them. But I look at some of them incidentally because some of them do go through my email. And yeah, there's quite a few Mars One volunteers are also volunteering for our mission. Now, I have asked Bas Lansdorf if Mars One would be interested in collaborating formally with us on that mission. He initially seemed quite favorable, then he said it wasn't the right time. But I still think it would be a very good thing to do, and not just for the sake of collaboration, for collaboration's sake, but because I think that you need to train the trainers. And that's the purpose of this mission. The purpose of this mission is not to train people who will go to Mars. The purpose of this mission is to figure out what you want to do to train people to go to Mars, to write the book of tactics and procedures, to figure out what it is that the actual colonists are going to need to learn. And so I think that it would be a very good thing for Mars One to collaborate with us on this, and I hope that that is possible.
Yes, there is one more question. Try to speak very loudly so that...
I will try to. My question is, when do you think that the colonization of Mars will be successful, or when will it be failed? And is there something in between?
Did you hear the question? When do you think that the colonization of Mars will be successful?
Say it again?
When do you think that the colonization of Mars will be successful?
Well, that's a tough one. You know, from a technical point of view, we're 10 years away from having people on Mars. And it's a question of having a group of people who have both the will and the money to do it. Right now, NASA has the money, but it doesn't have the will. Mars One and the Mars Society have the will, we don't have the money. But look, I think we're seeing interesting developments going on here. I'll put aside NASA for the moment, but you know, you take this phenomenon of Elon Musk. Okay, now Elon Musk, you might consider him a sport of nature in that he's a very unusual person among billionaires in that he wants to open space to humanity. There have been a couple of others who have also come along recently, Bigelow, perhaps Jeff Bezos. There were some people with almost as great resources a little while, Beale. But what's happening is the number of such people is becoming more frequent. And they're becoming more frequent for two reasons. One is there's a lot more billionaires now than there was 20 years ago or 50 years ago or 100 years ago. Okay, you know, 100 years ago, there were maybe 10 people in the United States as rich as Elon Musk. You know, J.P. Morgan, Rockefeller, Harriman, a couple of others that you might name. Now there's probably 1,000. So the probability of such a sport of nature coming along is much greater. And then in addition, this idea, the idea that we promote of human expansion into space, of a multi-planet future for humanity, this has become increasingly hegemonic. So more and more people, it doesn't have to be a majority, just a more significant number, a more significant fraction are becoming inspired by this idea in the literal sense of the word inspired, that is, the spirit of it is going into them. And so Musk may succeed, he may not, but there's going to be more Musks, okay? And whether they do it his way by doing a corporation, or maybe they come along and they decide to fund something like Mars One or the Mars Society, or they do something else of a different sort altogether, there's going to be more and more people trying. And you know, if the one leading the way drops the flag, someone else is going to come and pick it up. And so sooner or later we're going to do it. This is an idea whose time has come, and it will find the people that will make it happen.
Thank you very much. We are going toward the end of the session. I have a question myself I would like to ask your opinion about. There was a discussion before, of course, we talk about colonization, you talk about reproduction and starting, I mean, going to a world means also to expand. So just to conclude, I would like your short comments on your vision on that, depending on whether it is possible now or not to have conception on Mars, but what is your vision about that?
My vision about Mars colonization?
I mean, colonization is also part, you know, people will go there and eventually it belongs to the fact they will have, in some years, kids, hopefully, if supposing that that is possible from biological point of view. So what is your, how do you think about it? About these issues, of course, from an ethical, from many point of view is a discussable point. What is your view on that? I would like if you could comment on that very shortly to conclude the session.
Well, the whole point is to create new branches of human civilization. And in fact, I think that Mars will not just be one new branch, there'll be many eventually. There's room on Mars for more than one flag. And and whoever starts them, they will break off and start their own path. That is, whether they're started by individual nations or by international societies or something, they will take leave of their point of departure and evolve in their own way. And it is the nature of things that in order for them to succeed, they will have to be better. That is, the United States has been a great success because, for all its flaws, it made itself the kind of place that smart and determined people would want to immigrate to. Okay, where they could have a new chance, where they could place some new bets, and that's why it grew. For all the hardship there was crossing oceans and all the risks that took of leaving the known behind, a lot of people thought it was worth the risk. For a sufficient number, it paid off that people heard about, they kept coming. Because it offered people a greater chance to realize their human potential. The Martian society that succeeds, and that will eventually, I think, set the pattern for Mars, will be one that offers people a greater chance to realize their human potential than they can have on Earth. It will offer greater degrees of freedom. You know, it is characteristic of any society that it always is blind to its most common forms of oppression. Okay, you hear a lot about this or that group in our society demanding some more rights. But in fact, I think the most common form of oppression in our society is the denial of opportunity to the uncertified. The people who can do something but don't have the formal credentials to do it, and so are barred from practicing various professions that they could otherwise enter. The red tape, if you will. A Mars society is not going to be able to have the luxury of suppressing its human talent through bureaucratic obstacles. Because the most precious thing there'll be on Mars is human labor time and human ability. And so I think Mars will be free. And that's why Mars will be successful.
Thank you very much, Robert. Greatly appreciate your contribution. We'll go on now, and thanks for being part of it. Okay.